Hello and welcome everyone. Very excited to have with us today Madisyn Taylor. Madisyn is the founder of DailyOM. She has written 3 books and her latest book is called Unmedicated. And I'm just very excited to have you here today, Madisyn, sharing with our trainees your wisdom, your background. And I'd love to start with your personal story and how you started on your spiritual journey.
Yeah, I think that's really important because people need to understand how I got to the place that I'm at now. It wasn't just handed to me. It wasn't given to me. I wasn't born into this. In fact, I was born into a really dysfunctional family. My father and mother were very unavailable, probably both alcoholics. My father probably undiagnosed mental illness, but mostly he was a rageaholic. And I spent a lot of time hiding in my bedroom, in fact, in the closet of my bedroom. And I'd made myself a little world in my closet with posters and a lamp. It was my safe place for when my father would go on his raging binges. I would be alone in my closet. I had my first panic attack when I was in the 3rd grade, which is quite young for a child to experience something like that. And then it progressed really on through high school. And, when hormones kick in high school, then it sort of exacerbates everything. And I became suicidal. I started smoking and drinking, experimenting with boys, of course. But experimenting with boys in the way that I thought that they loved me, because my father did not love me. My parents never said they loved me ever. So I was really set up for mental illness at a really early age. In high school, I was terribly shy and terribly anxious. And so by the time I graduated into my early 20s, I started using harder alcohol and harder drugs, cocaine and just about everything that came my way. And I was having major panic attacks and anxiety attacks. But, in the 80s, that wasn't talked about. There was no internet, so I didn't know what was going on with me. I thought everyone must be this way because I was. And so I really suffered needlessly. I remember one time when I was 16, I actually went to the doctor and I said, I'm having trouble breathing. I can't catch my breath. And I didn't really have words at that age to express what was going on with me. I just told her, I feel like I have to force myself to breathe. And instead of diagnosing me at that age with anxiety, she just looked at me and said, "Oh, you've had too much sun," because I was raised in Seattle where there is no sun. So when the sun comes out, you go in the sun and you get really sunburned. And so her diagnosis was you had too much sun. And it was really unfortunate. And that was the first of really many misdiagnoses. And so as time went on into my early 20s, I actually became very, very sick and eventually bedbound. And at my worst, I went to a neurologist because I was having these strange symptoms, cognitive issues, so incredibly tired, strange pain in my body. And he did all these tests on me and he said, you are the sickest person I've ever seen. This is a neurologist. You're the sickest person I've ever seen, and I have no idea what's wrong with you. And, that's pretty frightening. And so he said, I'm going to write you a prescription for Prozac. And I said, isn't that an antidepressive? And he said, yes. And I said, but I'm not depressed. And he says, of course you are. And by that time, I really probably was. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And to me, depression meant you weighed 800 pounds and sat on the sofa, right, all day. That's what depression looked like to me, based on my, no knowledge. And he said, fill this prescription, and in 30 days, you'll feel better. And so I went home and I filled the prescription. I didn't want to, quite frankly, but I was so desperate at that point that I did. And Sura, you're not going to believe this. 20 minutes later, like I'd taken an Advil, 20 minutes later, I felt my brain wake up. I felt connections being made, and I felt alive for the first time in my life. And it's quite extraordinary, really. No doctors believe me. But I
But is
think that I was,
that's not when you took the actual medication? It was just from after you filled the prescription?
I took the actual
Oh,
medication
you
and
did take the actual,
yep, yeah,
oh, 20 minutes.
20 minutes
Okay.
later. And I think I was so lacking in what was in that drug that I just ate it up like a sponge. And, my brain was like, more, please. And so what that happened is that set me up for about 8 years worth of cycling through. My brain would get used to the meds. I'd have to ramp up to the next dose. And then you max out on the dose. And so they have to switch medications. So I've been on every antidepressant possible. And then
Mhm.
they say, oh, you can feel a little better. Here's another medication. And then I'm taking anti-anxiety medication. So pretty soon I've got this crazy cocktail going. And, I'm on this hamster wheel and I can't get off. And I thought there's got to be a better way. I don't want to live my life. I was in my early 20s at that point. I don't want to live my life feeling like a zombie. Because let's face it, I wasn't severely mentally ill. I had depression and I had anxiety, but I didn't have schizophrenia. I didn't have bipolar, serious mental illness that usually requires medication. And I thought, I feel like hell and I don't want to feel like this anymore 8 years later. So I decided to start a journey of getting off the meds.
And then
And
what happened at that point when you decided that?
uh, so the meds gave me enough energy to get off the sofa. I wasn't well enough to work, but it gave me enough energy to get off the sofa, which was a blessing. And so I would go and walk in my neighborhood, and I walked by. We used to call them New Age stores. I don't know what you call them now, but New Age stores.
New Age
So,
stores.
crystals and all that yummy stuff. And, a little voice told me to go in, and I went in and I felt so relaxed and welcomed. And there was this beautiful music playing. And I asked the cashier, I said, what is this music? And she told me, and I took it home. And really, it was just meditation music. It wasn't even guided meditation. So I brought it home, I put it on, I sat in my chair, and for 40 minutes, I blissed out. And at the end of it, I thought, wow, I feel lovely. Something is different. I'm relaxed. I'm going to do this again. And so each day, I just put on this music. Within a month, I was back at the New Age store and said, give me more, right? But what I got was a guided meditation instead. And so I brought home a guided meditation and started listening to those. And, I was still so sick, I could really only lay down. I couldn't even sit up in a proper posture. So I would lay down, my back was straight, my spine was straight. But I couldn't do all these things that really hardcore meditation teachers teach you to do. I couldn't sit in a lotus position to save my life. But you know what? I did what I could do. And that was good enough. And really, that set me up, that daily meditation practice with a guided meditation. It enabled me to hear the whispers, right, of universe, because I wasn't thinking about my sickness. I wasn't thinking about my pain. It enabled me to get quiet enough to hear the whispers. And the whisper told me, go get acupuncture. And so I'd go get acupuncture. And then I sought out a hands-on healer. And eventually I just healed my body enough where I could function. And, way fast forward, get to where I'm at when I started DailyOM in 2004. A long process in between for sure. But meditation opened the door for me for healing my body and my mind.
And was there a kind of meditation that you focused on or that you applied, or was it something that was intuitive for you?
It was not intuitive for me at all. I am one of those people with a busy brain. I've been told I have a great brain. I'm a businesswoman. I'm always thinking of new ideas. So I have one of those brains that doesn't like to shut off at night. It doesn't like to shut off to meditate. It's kind of like, screw you, meditation. I have things to think about. So
like many of our brains.
Right. So it's called a practice for a reason. And, in the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing. And so, but I knew that I wanted to advance from guided meditation. So the music started me off. The guided meditation enabled me to come and sit every day and relaxed me enough to get the incoming ideas. And then I just started my own program. I make everything up myself. I never do anything according to the rule books ever. I took my honeymoon before I got married, and, I do everything my own way. So I just learned to sit. I never took a meditation course. I should have. And I just taught myself. I'm very much self-taught, but I really had to learn to get from a laying down position to sitting up. And so, that took months of time. And I just learned to clear my mind. And that's what I focused on, or didn't focus on. And I was smart enough to know not to push it and not to be hard on myself. And, if it could only be 10 minutes, then it was only 10 minutes. But I soon settled into a routine where, almost like clockwork, I would go into meditation, I would come out, and it would be 20 minutes on the dot. And it was really extraordinary for me. And I felt like a victory for me, because I had been so sick and I couldn't work, that finally I could do something, right? And I could do it pretty well. And as time went on, that was my meditation practice, was to just sit. Eventually I added an altar, and I would sit in front of an altar on floor cushions. And I created the altar more to create a place to remind me to meditate every day, because I would walk by it and I'd say, oh, there's my altar. And again, I made it my way. I didn't do it according to any philosophy. There are some out there about how to create an altar. And I would just put my favorite things on my altar, and a candle and some incense. And, an interesting thing happened. It almost like my altar took on a personality and a life. It became a living thing in its own right, with all of my items from nature and loving things that people bought me. And I love Mother Mary, so Mother Mary was on there, and I always kept fresh flowers on there. And it felt like a partner in my healing and a partner in my meditation practice. And so for many, many years, I would sit before my altar on the floor. Now that I'm older, I sit before my altar on my sofa. I don't sit on the floor anymore. It's too hard on my back. But so I've shifted a little bit. But so I think there's a lid for every pot. And there's so many different kinds of meditation out there. I think that people really need to try and find what works best for them. And for me, just starting out with the music and then the guided was a really, it was baby steps, I would call it. And I'm a real baby steps kind of person. I think if somebody would have said, you need to sit every day in a Zen position, lotus, and clear your mind, I think that I probably would have failed at it. So I'm glad that I found what worked best for me and stuck with that.
Mm-hmm. It's so important to find that way of meditation for yourself, so it's comfortable, it's relaxing. And I'm so happy that you found that for yourself. And how can you share a little bit about how this led you to start DailyOM?
Yes. So right before DailyOM, I started an aromatherapy products company. And during my healing process and spending time in my garden, I realized that I loved crafting with nature and making products using nature and communing with the flower fairies and the angels. And so I actually started a line of all natural soy wax candles using essential oil. This was before soy wax candles were known. I had a line of essential oils, lotion, all those beauty things. And, I started it in my house. And that was really part of my healing process as well. It got me out of the house. It gave me sort of what started as a hobby and became a business. It introduced me to having my own business. It kept me accountable to get up every day and do something of meaning. Um, and it actually took off and did really well. It was sold all over the world. My secret sauce was that I made a natural product, but I put it in beautiful packaging. Back in the late 90s and even the early 2000s, the natural products, like the type you find at Whole Foods, they were still sort of in hippie packaging. And I wanted to have a natural product that was in beautiful packaging. And so I made that, and it became very successful. And I got a warehouse space in Hollywood, and my husband, who was working in the music industry, he actually was happy to quit his job because he was commuting in LA. And he quit his job and came to help me make these products and sell these products. And using his business savvy, it took off even more. I had a feeling that wasn't going to last long when he came to the warehouse space with me. And we had both been feeling that we wanted to do something bigger, even though my products were sold all over the world and the company was getting big. I was blessing all the products, and the space I was making them in was blessed. And I thought, when people use my products, they're getting this blessing. And I was really happy with that. It was a really sweet gesture that really only I knew about, and the few employees that I had knew about. But I wanted to reach more people, and I wanted to help shift people. People say we want to help shift the planet, but the planet's fine. She's fine. We need to shift humanity. And so we both really put on our thinking caps. And my husband, Scott, he said, what if we send a daily email every day? And it started out very different than it is today. But here is all this life experience I had, having the childhood I did, all the trauma that I did, all the sickness that I did, all the healing that I went through. It seems almost a waste to have that happen just for me. Not that that is a waste, but how can I use all this and spread the love and help other people? And so that's how we started a daily email. DailyOM was born out of that need to help shift humanity and, raise the consciousness like so many people have. And I'm sure your students have the same idea. And, that was in 2004, and things were very, very different back in 2004. There was no Facebook then, if you can believe that. It's hard to imagine, right? So that it started as a desire, a strong heart desire, and almost a soul calling, if you will. And as soon as we settled in, it took about 6 months really to find our stride. And as soon as we did, it was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And at that time I was 40 something. So, I'm a late bloomer, but better late than never. And here I'm at 53 with a multi-million-dollar company sending out 4 million emails a day. So, it's
that is incredible.
Yeah.
That's absolutely incredible. And I think so inspiring to the people who are listening. How do you go about writing a DailyOM email every day? How does that work for you?
Right. Well,
and what has that been like for you to do that?
Well, it's, that was a journey in itself. These days I'm 3 months ahead. I have 3 months of material in the can. I have to, because now I have a child. Things happen. People get sick. Last year at this time we had the Thomas fire and we were evacuated, and then the mudslides happened. So, and I have a staff of 17 people that I need to keep employed. So I'm 3 months ahead on all my work now, and worked really hard to get to that point. But in the beginning, I have to tell you, Sura, I went through a process where I felt such burden and weight on my shoulders to come up with something brilliant every day. And I felt that it was my duty to help to heal people. And I was getting burned out early on to write 5 stories a week. And so I went into meditation about it, because that's, as you know, that's where all good stuff happens, right? Is meditation. And that's where the answers are, and journaling. And I work with Mother Mary, as I mentioned, and in a non-religious way. She's just who showed up for me in my healing. And I heard her whisper in my ear, and she said, Madisyn, it is not your job to heal the world. That's my job. And immediately I just felt the weight lifted off of my shoulders. And I realized, okay, I'm just a messenger here, right? I'm a foot soldier. I'm taking the information that gets downloaded and presenting it. It's not me. And so what I would do is, after going through that crazy period of immense stress and feeling the weight, I decided I would take one day a week and not go to the offices. And that day I would stay home, and the whole day would be dedicated to being in a meditation state. So it's not a day for laundry or doctor's appointments or tea with friends. It is a day of work, but in a different way. It's the candles lit, it's the meditation music, it's the notebook out. And during that day, I would come up with a list of 5 story ideas for the coming days ahead. Sometimes the information would come through so quickly that I would actually write the story right there and then, almost like, it was being given to me, like almost like it was channeled, really. Some days I would be given one word, which really sucked those days. I hate that, one word. Some days I would get just a really great concept of what to write about. And this happened after I used all of everything that came off the top of my head, when I had to start really digging for ideas. And so it never failed, taking that day. Sometimes I would get the ideas within the first hour, and I actually could take the rest of the day off. And some days it took the entire day to get my 5 ideas. And I picked Tuesday for no apparent reason. So it was Tuesday was my idea day. And so getting the ideas, for the most part, was the hard part. And then they had to be filled out with the writing. And I remember Maya Angelou, the great and late poet and writer Maya Angelou, she wrote that when she had to put a book out, she would take a 5th of whiskey, I think it was whiskey, and go and get a hotel room and lock herself in with her bottle on her desk. And I thought that was hilarious, but that's not me. And I am not a be creative on demand person. Either it's with me or it's not. And that can be problematic when I had to come up with 5 stories a week. So that's where having that Tuesday really helped. I set up the energy for that to be a creative day. And I really worked with spirit, universe, God, whatever you want to call it. Help me here. I am at your mercy. I want to help people. I'm an open book. I'm grateful for any help you'll give me. And then it never failed. The ideas always came. And it was a running joke between myself and my husband. I would tell him, I said, I just can't do this anymore. I'm out of ideas. The well is dry. Nothing's going to come to me. I just know the ideas aren't going to come. And he would just laugh, because he knew the ideas would come. I was never let down. And some days I would, I say hear a whisper, but really it's an inner knowing. I don't hear voices. It's an inner knowing, an inner feeling. And I would feel or hear go outside. And I'd say, what do you mean go outside? I'm sitting here at my altar with my journal. I don't have time to go outside. And I'd go outside, and then I'd feel like, I was supposed to look down, and I would look down. And here would be these ants. And I'm like, you want me to look at ants? But as I really looked at the ants and observed them and got quiet with the ants, they showed me how they work in community, building their nest and getting their food and creating their structure. And that story came out of that, how we should be more like ants. So, some stories are quite serious and deep. And that's too much 5 days a week. So some days are a little more light, such as writing about turtle energy or something of that sort. But yeah, I could not do this without guidance and help from spirit. And taking the time to be quiet and go in, and taking the time to really, open the crown chakra and listen as well.
That is so incredible, Madisyn. Also, because it's an interesting combination of allowing yourself to be led by spirit, but yet you're also running this multi-million-dollar company. I mean, it's such an incredible paradox in a sense, and it's also unique in that you are one of the sole content providers of DailyOM, and you write that daily piece. Do you feel that that has been part of your sadhana, in a sense,
Mm.
your spiritual practice is to write those articles every day? Because they're very deep. I mean, every single one you write, it just seems to hit the nail on the head. And not just that, it seems to come through in terms of timing. A lot of times when I receive your daily ohms, it's exactly what I needed to hear that
See,
day.
I'm getting chills because that is the most popular customer service fan mail email that I get is, how did you know? I have this one woman and she says, you're spying on me. I know you're spying. I'm not in a creepy way, but she's like, do you live next door? Are you on the roof next door spying on me? How do you know what I need to hear each day? And this is the beauty of being human, living on the planet right now. We're all going through the same thing. And we all are. It's just our packaging's a little different, right? What it looks like for you in your life, it might show up different in my life, but really at the base, it's all the same. That's why I don't write in the first person. I don't say it's about me. I don't give specifics. Keeping it about the topic, that way everyone can put their own stuff on it. And then they go onto the message boards and they really put their own stuff on it for sure. So it's really the beauty of it. And I have to say there's magic there with that as well. But it's absolutely part of my spiritual practice. We teach what we need to learn, and clearly when I write these pieces, I have to relive something and go deeper with it, so I can bring it to my audience. And I don't always like doing that. It's not fun, but again, I went through all of these things for a reason, to help myself and to help other people. I'd say 95% of what I write about I've been through. There's some things that I haven't. I haven't been through a divorce. Some things like that I haven't been through, but I've had close friends that have. And so I've been able to write from that point of view. But yes, it's extremely healing.
And it is healing for other people to read your work. I'd also like to ask, because we do have people that are listening in, about what it's like to start a business based on spirituality and how you marry spirit with business and what you think it really takes to be successful in that.
It's interesting. I don't know if it's this way now, but when we started out, people expected you, if you have a spiritual business, to be poor and to not experience wealth. And I always said, people expect me to live in a tent and eat dirt. And that's not true. Why can't I create wealth? Because what I would do with wealth is probably better than what a lot of people do with wealth, right? I'm not out buying toys. I don't have 10 cars. I have a 10-year-old car, one 10-year-old car. I don't live in a mansion. So there's nothing wrong with creating wealth. And I think a lot of us have those money blocks. And so that's the very first thing you need to work through if you're starting a spiritual business, as we all think we're worth it. And you think you don't have money issues or money blocks, but guess what? Down there you do. I surprisingly did. I surprisingly had came from issues of lack because my parents both worked at Boeing. They made good salaries, but they never spent it on the kids or anything nice. They were always stuffed it away, and it wasn't ever put back out into the community. And so everything was very meager, and you don't need a winter coat. And so I actually had feelings of lack. And so the first thing you need to do is really look at how you feel about making money. And it's really important because I think everyone has some issue with money. The next issue is not everyone is going to approach business the way you do. Not everyone is nice, and not everyone puts smiley emojis at the end of their sentences. And so we think being in a spiritual business and working with other spiritual people, that it's all going to be sunshine and roses and namaste. And it's not that way. I have found it's not unpleasant, but it wasn't what I was expecting. I was kind of always living in this dream world, of sunshine and roses, and it really wasn't that way. And when you work with big companies, internet hosting companies and message board companies and Facebook and all of that, they have regular folks that work there. And so you do have to work with regular people, and, it's their languaging you have to get used to. So we need to get out of that mindset that everything's going to be really super beautiful with a spiritual business. The other issue is having employees. What is your contract? What is your agreement with your employees? And I really got myself into a bit of a mess, and had to really redefine what our agreement was. At the end of the day, the purpose of business is to make money, right? Otherwise, you'd be a nonprofit. So you're making money, and you're hiring people, and your agreement with them is that they work for you and you pay them money. That is the basic agreement, and it sounds really cut and dry. And from then on, you have to be really careful. I wanted all of my employees to, I wanted circle time and to talk about our feelings and do all of that. But to be honest, in my company, that didn't work so well. It creates a culture of not wanting to put in your best effort and meeting deadlines because, we need to ring a bell and talk about this. And, but I needed to learn that lesson. I think if you have a really small business, maybe if you have a personal assistant or one or two people, it can work. But when you're trying to grow a company, you have to be careful about what sort of culture and expectations you're setting up with them, and really go back to what's your basic agreement. Of course you can still be nice to them and lovely to them and ask them about their feelings, but how much belongs in the workplace in terms of a talking stick, at meeting times. And so it really took me a lot of dancing around to figure out that balance, because the more leeway I gave, the less work that was getting done. Oh, Madisyn's so nice. I don't need to come in today. Oh, Madisyn's so nice. She won't mind if I'm 2 hours late. Oh, Madisyn's so nice. She won't mind if I take another job and leave her in the lurch. And so there needs to be that balance, as with all things. So that's something to really keep in mind as well. And then watching your own energy levels, because when you start your own business or you're working for yourself, whether you have employees or not, you're working hard, and you need to work hard, and you need to watch your energy levels, which is where a daily practice really comes into play, and whatever that looks like for your listeners. But you don't want to get to that point where you're burned out, because it's really hard to come back from burnout, especially if you burn out your adrenals or worse. So watch your, don't be working till 9 o'clock at night and then getting up at 5 in the morning. Get your 8 hours of sleep, have your bath, eat healthy, get your exercise in, and I wouldn't compromise on self-care, because when you're starting a new business, you do work tremendously hard. And to that point too, this whole manifesting idea, a lot of people have come under the impression that they can manifest anything they want by working an hour a day, right? And maybe some people have that ability. I don't. It's old-fashioned hard work, and I was raised that way. And so it's there really isn't time off in the beginning. You have to work hard, and then you get your time off. I wasn't taking vacations and that sort of thing. I took time to meet with friends, to have tea. But, I always put in 8 to 10 hour days, at least in the beginning. It wasn't this, I'm going to charge people $1,000 an hour and work, 1 day a week. And, that's not me. And I think if you want to do that, you need to build up to it. You can't come out of the box running. You need to have some experience behind you. You need to have some testimonials behind you. You can't decide, I'm going to be a blogger and I'm going to charge people $1,000 an hour and nobody knows who you are. And so there really needs to be realistic goals set in place. And I'm using that number just, randomly. It could be whatever the number is. You really, yes, you might be worth it, but you need to prove it. You need to build up your list, and you need to build up a clientele, and you need to have something that people really want. Are you worth $1,000 an hour? I don't know. So, if you are, well, wonderful. I want to see you. But yeah, be realistic about what you're charging and what your services are, and be kind and be fair and show up when you're supposed to, and don't be late, and kind of all these old-fashioned values that have disappeared. Common courtesy, really, yeah.
It
All
sounds
that.
like taking a grounded, pragmatic approach with business and allowing yourself to have those boundaries and the balance has allowed you to create successfully. Now, considering that you had some business experience from your first business, how were you able to build? Did you collaborate with other people who knew about business, or were you able to do that from a guided place within yourself?
Right. So back in 2004, when we started, there weren't a lot of tools that there are today to get a mailing list put together. And so we found like-minded people in our industry, and we didn't swap mailing lists, but we swapped advertising on each other's lists. And that's how we built ours. There was also something called pop-under ads. I don't know if people remember those. It used to be before you closed out a window, or no, when you closed out a window on your computer, an ad would pop up. Of course, since then they've made ad blockers, but then a beautiful DailyOM calming ad would present you in the face and say, don't you want more of this every day in your inbox? And so that really worked well for us. Nowadays, people get funding, and that's a great way really to get some money, is to go to your local small business associations and join all those ladies at lunch and ladies at launch, and mingle and really work it that way. It's tremendously helpful. It sounds old-fashioned, but it still really works. We go to MIT functions every month where there's high-level people with money looking to fund companies, and we've made a lot of friends and business connections that way. People still print business cards, pass them out, receive them, and just really get out there in any way you can. Show your face, tell people about your business, get people to send an email for you if you can, and then return the favor. But again, have something that people really want. What do you have that's different than someone else? What can you offer that is different than somebody else? And make a quality ad, make a quality newsletter. Do everything you can, the very best. Don't piecemeal it together. Don't be willy-nilly. Have someone else look at it that you trust and say, will you read this? Do you like it? Give me your honest feedback. Have it proofread. All of these things are really important. But number one, have integrity. Always stay in integrity. Absolutely.
That's very important. And how do you find that balance of, I think I read somewhere, or you had mentioned that you're more of an introvert.
Yes.
And so how is that for you, handling all of this business extroversion type of work, and then also having that sacred time for creativity to yourself? How do you balance that?
I am just starting to really get to learn to balance that. It's funny, when I put my well, I love having an online business because no one ever saw my face for years and years and years. You know, I have a face for radio. So it's like I do radio shows all the time. I'd be in my pajamas and I loved it. You know, I don't have a face for TV. I don't have a face for video. And so I like to stay hidden. I like my privacy. I like to stay anonymous. And I really liked people to like DailyOM and not say, oh, who is this person writing it? Because I didn't want it to be about me. I wanted it to be about the work. But in all honesty, I am super shy. I am an introvert. I like to be alone. And with my first two books, you know, I didn't go out on book tour. I would do book signings and that sort of thing, but I didn't really want to do speaking events. And with this last book, Unmedicated, I really felt the push and the pull and the shove, actually. It was a shove from universe, from spirit. It's like, people need to see you. And so you got to get out there. And it was telling my story and seeing the physical body to make it more real for people. And again, I'll do whatever it takes to help people heal. And I went on book tour this year and I got so burnt out. I was laid out flat for 4 months and I overdid it. I was traveling alone. I was doing TV shows, speaking events. I booked hotels. For some reason, they didn't have bathtubs. They only had showers. I don't understand this. Developers, please don't take out the bathtubs. We need bathtubs, right? For our self-care.
Absolutely.
Yes. And so, you know, I couldn't carry around bags of Epsom salt in my luggage. And I just, you know, I kind of spiraled down because I wasn't able to keep up my practice. I wasn't out walking every day and journaling and meditating because I was just go, go, go on the road. And so I actually got really burned out. And it was a really good reminder for me, you know what? Okay, I can't do that. I need to leave. I need to go out and come home, go out and come home, go out and come home. And when I am out, to make sure and take my walk, even if it's in the city, and book hotels that have bathtubs. And
yeah,
I learned a lot. So yes, I don't do a lot of that whole shielding business. I did try that for a while. I just decided instead to strengthen myself from the inside out. And when I go into meditation, I create this light within my heart center, and then I spread that out. So instead of bringing in light from elsewhere, I've quit doing that now, and I just create my own light within, and I push it out, and that sort of creates a energetic barrier, and I know where it's coming from. It's coming from me. I've made it, and that's one of my little tricks that I've started doing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I learned really, how to treat being an introvert and having to go on the road and being in public. But otherwise, there's nothing wrong with being alone. It's always, again, coming back to balance. If I find I've been alone for a week, well, that's probably a problem. I need to go out and make a tea date with a friend.
And when you say being alone, because you are in partnership as well. So is that, when you say being alone, does that mean within your relationship, or how does that?
It means not going to the office, the DailyOM office that day, and
okay.
working at home for, a week in a row, which, I can do. I actually prefer to be at home because the office is busy energy. It's business energy, and I'm a creative energy. So being alone, for 8 hours at home alone, and then the family comes home. But, okay, let's go to the office today. Let's make an appearance. Let's get out and see people in the real world. Because I can easily, especially before my child, I could stay in my house for a month, no problem. And, that's just not balanced. So I have to work at that for sure.
I think a lot of us do. And that we would love to stay at home for a month at a time. Also, I wanted to ask you about book writing and how you receive creative inspiration for your book, how you go about writing a book, and maybe how it's helped you in your business and your work and your spiritual path.
Yeah, so writing a book it's a process. It's like being pregnant and giving birth, honestly. With this last book, I was really feeling, again, a strong push from spirit. And when I say a strong push, it's a strong inner knowing. And every time I would sit to meditate, it would infiltrate my thoughts. to put everything that I've learned into book form, how I became sick and depressed, how I healed myself, how I started DailyOM, and then the program that I do every day to stay off meds. And I thought, I couldn't be the only one that feels this way, that wants to get off meds. I'm not against medication. I'm not against doctors. They both saved my life. But I can't be the only person on the planet that wanted a different way. And I did it. And so I thought, let's share this with other people. So it was really that inner desire again to help people. And I was smart with this book. I wrote it all first and then shopped it around to publishers. And I actually prefer that. Otherwise, as soon as you get a book deal, you start getting deadlines immediately. And I cannot create on deadlines. I'm not a create on demand person. It's not like you're scrapbooking, right? You're writing about emotional healing. And so I can't do that on demand. And it also really wears me out. The publisher in this book, they went back and said, we need more in the front. We need your story. And so I had to write about, unfortunately, 2 times that I had attempted abduction on my life, which is crazy that people would have 1 attempted abduction, but I had 2. And so, it really laid me out. It's heavy and sometimes dark work, depending on your subject matter. And so I missed some deadlines, and publishers are smart. They leave a lot of cushion because they know that writers are going to miss their deadlines, because that's what writers do. Writers are never satisfied with their work. And so they're always rewriting. But I'm not a deadline person. Some people love deadlines and they work more efficiently with deadlines. I'm not that person, and I can't create on demand. So I actually wrote my manuscript as fully as I could before I went out and sold it. A lot of people just need to write a treatment and write 1 or 2 chapters and then shop it around. I knew if I did that, I'd be in a world of hurt because the deadline would be looming. So, but I was really lucky. I had DailyOM already really established. And so Hay House published my first 2 works, and I already had a built-in audience. So that was really great that nobody gets a big publisher right off the bat. So I was really fortunate to get Hay House. But there's nothing wrong with self-publishing these days. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with going with a small publisher at all. And if you are a writer and feel the need to share your story, really figure out, is this something that I just need to send in a Christmas card to family and friends, or write a blog? Or is this something that I really want to go wide with and do speaking events and travel with, and sit with that and see, where that motivation is coming from. Is it coming from the ego? I want a publishing deal, and, I want to do speaking events so my face can be everywhere. Excuse me, my nose is running. Or where is the motivation? What is the desire to want to write a book? Because a lot of people send me their manuscripts, and I just think, this is lovely, but there isn't an audience for this. Why don't you just share it with your friends and family? And that's okay too. There's beauty in that as well. But it's a lot harder work than I thought it was. Before my first book, I thought putting out a book was glamorous, sort of like the old days of ad agencies. There was glamour in that and status, and it's tremendously hard work. And I think I was telling you before we started this that I don't know if I'll put out a 4th book because it's demanding. But to be fair, I also am running a business, so this isn't my sole business. If it
and
were,
how do you do that? How do you manage that? I mean, with all that you do, are you setting a schedule for yourself, or do you have an approach with it, or are you just kind of writing as you go?
I am hyper organized, and I'm old fashioned organized. I write things. I don't use my phone to organize myself, or a computer. I write things in a notebook. I'm just old dog that way. I just can't change to putting things in my iPhone. And so I set schedules, and I stick to them. And if I miss my own imposed deadlines, sorry, my voice is going to start going. If I start missing my own self-imposed deadlines, then I I cancel other things that aren't as important, because the deadlines, they do need to get met. I do have a daily magazine, even though I work well ahead of time. I don't want to let anyone down, so I make sure and I hit my deadlines. And I also don't overschedule myself. I know what I'm capable of. I'm 53 now, so I know my body, I know my mind, I know my schedule, and I make sure and leave some empty space as well, because I need it. And then sometimes I'll have to overflow into that empty space. But I'm not one of these women where I schedule 10 things in a day. I can't do that. But for me, it's being hyper organized. I carry a journal with me everywhere I go. There's one in the bathtub. There's one in my car. There's one in my purse. There's one outside where I sit in the lounge chair, because things come to me, and if I don't write them down, I'll forget them. And I really rely on getting that, that input from spirit to keep me on task and keep the ideas flowing. And so, yeah, I write things down. I use index cards, Post-it notes, and notebooks, and that's the way I roll.
That is so interesting and fabulous to hear. Well, we're going to start wrapping up, and if you have a few extra minutes, we'd love to open it up and have some people ask a few questions from our audience. But just in closing, what would you like to share with our trainees, our students who are now going to start embarking and sharing meditation with the world? Is there something that you'd like to share with them directly from your heart to their heart?
Yes. Oh gosh, yes. Know that the work you're doing for yourself and for others, this cough drop out, it's really important work. And meditation gets a bad rap sometimes of its non-importance and that it's flighty. I think it's some of the most important work that anybody can do. It saved my life. And to be able to share your gift with others in that way, I think is tremendous. I would also add that maybe you consider sharing your work with less fortunate people. Think about going to women's shelters, dealing with low-income people. If you're a person that could possibly go into prisons, there's a lot of yoga in prisons, so meditation in prisons. So just putting that little spark out there. That isn't for everybody, but that would be a beautiful part of giving back, is if consider doing that. But know that you're doing important work, and it's some of the most beautiful work on the planet, and I applaud your efforts for sure.
Thank you so much, Madisyn. Really appreciate that message. Let's go ahead and see if we have any questions. I just need to, Chella, I believe I need to promote you to panelist. And Madisyn, I want to be aware of your time and energy, so let me know if you need to hop.
I'm good for about 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes? Okay, great. So if you have a question from the audience, please feel free to type it in and Q&A. And Chella will also help with this. Are you able to type into Q&A, guys? Just checking. Okay, Chella said she just got kicked out. She's coming back in.
People are shy at first, and then the floodgates open. Once one person asks a question, then it starts.
Yes, I'm sure there are actually a lot of burning questions. And are you able to type in the chat box, guys, or the Q&A? Let me know what your questions are.
And if they don't come up, you could email them to me, and I could answer you on email. That would work later on. If this doesn't work out, that would be fine.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. For some reason,
Technology isn't always on our side.
Okay. Chella, you can come back on as me if you like. I don't know if it'll kick me out though. That's the only thing. Okay, we do have a question in Q&A. The chat. Okay. So, if you have a question, please ask on Q&A. The chat box is disabled right now. I'll wait one more minute here and see if anybody has a question. And I guess I'll go ahead and ask because I have so many questions I could ask you, Madisyn. What do you do to rejuvenate yourself? And I'm curious about what your next spiritual steps are. What are your guidance orders for this time? What are you receiving for what you need at this time?
Well, it's interesting. Very interesting question. I am in a weird sort of middle gray area right now. I feel something new coming and I don't know what it is yet. So I'm kind of like in the middle of the door jam. I'm not out the door. I'm not in the door or the window. And so it's a really interesting, and I'm really excited because whenever that happens, it's like a big project comes through. So I'm very excited about that. As for, as for rejuvenation, nature, being out in Mother Nature, absolutely have to be in nature every day. If I don't, it shows up and I see it. So I go for a walk up my hill every day, and I live next to a nature preserve, which is great. And I live probably 2-minute drive from the ocean in Santa Barbara. So,
Oh, that's lovely.
yeah. So you know, there's nothing that Mother Earth can't cure for me, and a bath, a hot bath. But so rejuvenation definitely comes from the earth always. And it's my practice of meditation, journaling, and being in nature, moving my body, all of that. It's kind of my daily routine. And I write about it in my book for sure. But yeah, if I didn't have my time in nature, I don't know where I'd be. You know, in Japan, they have something called forest bathing. But the government says go out and do your forest bathing. And I thought, and it's not to go and play frisbee or, you know, do anything that in the park. It's to go and be with the trees. And could you imagine if our leader of our country said, Americans go out in the forest and just be with nature? Could you imagine like the shift that would happen in our country? Wouldn't that be just amazing? I can't even imagine what
It would
we'd be
be. I
like.
mean, I think it would change a lot of things because I think that a lot of the disconnections happening is because of our disconnection from nature.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in these cities and we don't get outside enough because you can feel that immediate shift when you're around all those massive trees.
Yes.
It's like you're being fed, being given oxygen. And it's such an amazing shift. And it's amazing how we almost forget on a daily basis how much that feeds us if we're not constantly engaged in that cycle of nature.
Absolutely. You know, it's our disconnection from nature, our disconnection from self, and our disconnection from spirit, right? All of those things is why we're struggling as a species. And in America especially, I'm first generation American. My family came from Germany and Switzerland. So I don't really know what it's like to be an American, but I know that in this country, we don't really have rituals here. Most countries that have been around thousands of years, our country is, you know, a couple hundred years old only. It's very young. We don't have rituals for ourselves, for our family. You know, we have Thanksgiving, we have holidays, but we don't have rituals in our life. And I think that is a big part of our problem, in all honesty. And we can create rituals for our own selves and within our own family really easy. Anything can become a ritual. It doesn't have to be witchy poo. It's a, you know, I think I think people are scared of that word. You know, a ritual can be while you're in the shower, you know, having something you do every day in the shower, like you give blessings or you send love ahead to your day, which is what I do. It's like I send love ahead to myself for the day when I'm washing my hair. And that's a ritual I do. And so rituals can be, you know, buying yourself flowers once a week at the farmer's market. And I like to leave myself a little tiny little bottle in my refrigerator, and I cut rosemary and herbs from my garden and I put them in my refrigerator. Like, so every time I open the fridge, there's like a little bouquet of herbs greeting me. You know, that's a little
That's
ritual.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Mhm. And it's very
So,
grounding, those rituals. And I think we
yes.
miss those rituals with our community too, because we don't,
Yes.
we're lacking in those rituals within community. And I don't know how comfortable people feel creating those rituals out of um, nothing, you know, creating a new ritual that isn't witchy poo, for example, but
Right.
really bringing people together and people having the courage to first initiate that, and then people having the courage to show up to it,
Hmm.
and making space for it. So I think that that's also something that's really needed. I think we do
Yes.
have some questions that came through really quickly. I don't,
Okay.
um, so someone wanted to really thank you from sharing your story from such a deep place, and Erin
Mm,
wanted to thank you for that.
okay.
Joy Birch has asked, um, handling daily dramas and interruptions. What do you do for that? Are there any suggestions for getting back into the flow?
Yes. I have, my son is 9 and he's gifted, so he's a handful. He's, you know, has a IQ of an adult when he was 5 years old. So I get the daily drama thing. Um, I'm luckily I don't have drama at my office because I only hire nice people. But the first thing to do is you have to take a breath and realize that it's not you, it's them. And right then, instantly, uh, you get a reset, right? It's, what is the term? Not my monkey, not my circus. And so I choose not to engage with these people or their behaviors. It's almost like I tell my son, if somebody's teasing you, um, be extra nice to them or ignore them. One of those is going to work. And, you know, at his level. So I don't engage in drama at all. I feel like I've earned my dues. I've learned my lessons. At this age, I have no time for drama. And I just have to realize this is something really interesting. You know, when you're on the road and people do something to endanger your life, they're blowing a stop sign or whatever, something on the road, and you're cursing at them, flipping them off, giving them the F word because you're really mad. Um, I've quit doing that too because I realized that at one time I was that person. So at one time, I was that control drama queen person. Probably, maybe not in this lifetime, maybe it was another lifetime. But I have to believe at one time I was a young soul. And in this lifetime, I was pretty darn stupid at one time. All the stuff I did as a teenager and as a really hurt young adult, someone who was crying out in pain, who was injured emotionally, who was mentally ill. I was that person. And so now when I see a drama or somebody doing something in traffic, sure, your first urge is to get upset or get involved or react, but I take a breath and I remember my practice, and then I bless the person and I let it go. And I realize when I'm blessing the person that I was that person at one time, even though I don't want to believe it. I wasn't this way my whole life. And so to have compassion, to really find that place of compassion, you will drive yourself crazy otherwise. And so that's kind of the toolbox I've created for handling those kinds of people. And then your reset, my reset now is just, you know, just a deep breath out. Sometimes I attach a snap to it or a movement just to help ground that and deepen that breath. And it takes practice, like meditation, to really make that work. And but you have to do it for your own sanity. And so that's what I do, is really find that place of compassion and to not get involved in the drama whenever possible. But it's unfortunately part of life and being human, and it surrounds us and we're all dealing with it. And we just need to dig into our toolbox a little bit deeper. And it's hard. Bless you. I get it.
Thank you. That was beautiful, Madisyn, and really appreciate your time today with us. And just to remind everyone, Madisyn has her third book out, Unmedicated. If you want to check it out, it has the 4 pillars of natural wellness that she includes in her book. And Madisyn, thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time and energy and your generosity and your
Thank you.
authenticity. We really appreciate it. I know that the things you shared really touched our community deeply.
Please
And
feel free to email
we're
me
very
if people come up
grateful.
with questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, we will.
Okay,
Thank you
take
so
care.
much. All right.
Bye.
Bye. Lots of
Bye-bye.
blessings.
Bye, everybody.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.